The topic I chose for the persuasive speech was social media and all forms of online communication. This really interests me because as our generation has gotten older, more and more people lean towards this form of communication as being their primary form of communication throughout everyday life. Um, Growing up with smartphones in our hands and laptops and tablets easily accessible, it's pretty easy for us to just start using an online form of communication in our everyday lives instead of actually going face to face with someone. Um, Social media has negative effects on interpersonal communication because people are lacking the ability to effectively communicate and build relationships due to the fact that social media hinders face-to-face social skills. Social media inhibits nonverbal communication, and social media creates negative effects on relationships. The first point I would like to point out is that social media hinders face-to-face social skills. Um, this is a fact for many reasons. One being that when doing this, you can have trouble speaking to people because you're simply out of practice. The only way to get better at speaking to people is becoming more and more familiar with that. And with social media and texting and iMessage and all this stuff, you really start to lack face-to-face personal interpersonal skills because you would rather be on your phone instead of face to face. Sometimes people feel either more confident or just feel more comfortable like that. But in the long run, it's bad for us because it's not preparing us for jobs, because it's not preparing us for interviews. When we go sit down with our employer, you're going to have to speak face to face. And if all you've done is been texting, or all you know is social media, Instagram, Snapchat, you're really going to have trouble getting any jobs in the future. Another reason that social media hinders face-to-face social skills is because people prefer online communication. With such a rise in social media, texting, smartphones in the last decade, people are just more comfortable with it. They prefer it. I don't know if it's just a generational thing, but I think that people are just more comfortable with maybe sitting in their room texting somebody next room over than actually going face to face and talking to them. The second thing I would like to point out is that social media inhibits nonverbal communication. When you're either texting or you're on Instagram or Twitter, there's absolutely no nonverbal communication that you can see. There are emojis, which is kind of like a form of nonverbal communication, but actual genuine nonverbal communication it's gone. And like we've learned from the past chapters, nonverbal communication is a major form of communicating with somebody else. That's how you express your emotions. That's how you convey your message into the form that you want it perceived as. Nonverbal skills give the person you're talking to a much better understanding of what you're saying and how you want to be perceived. One thing about nonverbal communication is you have less of a connection with the other person. If you're constantly just texting and on Twitter, you don't get a true connection with the other person. You may think you are, but until you're face to face, the connection it's just not genuine. Another subtopic of that is that you just can't tell their emotions whenever you're not face to face. Like I said earlier, it's almost impossible to know someone's emotions, and without emotions, there's a part of the communication that is simply lost. The third point that I'd like to point out about social media is it creates negative effects on relationships. in today's society, we have online dating sites and um, different. We have Twitter, we have Instagram, and different forms of social media that you can potentially find a partner with. And with these come some negative effects, such as you fail to see their personality. When you're constantly in communication with somebody, but it's not face to face, you don't know their true personality. You can only take the text for what it's worth. They might be thinking something completely different, say it in a completely different meaning, but the way you take it could be completely different. But there's no way to know that until you're actually face to face with them. Another thing about that is online dating has a lack of intimacy. When you're constantly just texting or um, chatting online, there's no real form of intimacy. And I think if you're gonna have a real relationship, the only way to be real with each other is to be connected in the same room. It's hard to have a girlfriend or boyfriend if you're not actually seeing them, if you're only just texting them or chatting with them online. And that's my persuasive speech.